So somebody sent me a piece of artwork and asked me to do a little demonstration of VCarve using this artwork. And I think it's going to be kind of a cool project. So I created this video for him, and I thought that it would be nice to share it with some other folks that might be able to learn from it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Create New File. My material size is 10 inches by 10 inches by 3/4. Max by date and position bottom left corner, and I'm just going to click OK. And then I'm going to come up here to import a bitmap, and here is the image that he sent me, this Celtic Knot. I'm going to open it, and I'm not going to resize it yet. I'm going to do that a little bit later, but after I convert it from a bitmap to a vector. I'm going to trace the bitmap, and I'm going to increase the bitmap fading so that I can, or reduce the fading so that I can see the image a little bit brighter. And I'm going to focus in on this text here, because you can see that there's sort of these pipelines on the inside of the text, and I want to see if we can eliminate that, because I don't think it's going to add a lot to this project if we leave it there. So to do so, I'm going to change this threshold and basically move it so that it minimizes that. You can see it's starting to disappear a little bit. I don't want to go too far. As you see, if I go too far, well, that's pretty good right there. I think right there is where we want to be. I was concerned. I wanted to make sure that I didn't lose some of the black. If I go too far, the black will actually start to break up. And I'm going to increase the noise filter to about 4 pixels, because I want to make sure that it sees all of these little pixels here as noise and basically eliminates it. And I'm also going to loosen the corner fit. It's already pretty loose at about 20%, so that should be good. So let's go down here and preview this and see how it looks. And you can see we accomplished the goal. We eliminated those. You can see, actually, I'll take the bitmap fading off a little bit, and you'll see it a bit better. You can see that the pixelation inside the lettering is not been turned into a vector, so it's effectively not going to be a problem for us. I'm going to apply that and close this, and then I'm going to hide the bitmap layer. So now we can see what we've got. And we're going to do 2 things. First of all, we're going to increase the size of this to about 8 inches. So it's 8 by approximately 8.4. We're going to apply that. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to offset a couple of the vectors here. The first one I want to offset, and I'll explain why I'm doing this here in a second. I want to offset this first vector, this outer vector, the border, by 1/8 of an inch, and I want to delete the original. So it's basically going to move that out a little bit, as you can see. And then I'm going to do a second one. I'm going to take this one, and I'm not going to delete the original, and I'm going to offset that by 50 thousandths. So let's call it 60 thousandths of an inch. So about half the first one. And we'll offset that. All right, so now let me explain why I did that. The reason that I did it was when I go to carve this, I wanted to make sure that the text is carved. And then I wanted to make sure, so when you're doing V-carving, what's going to happen is it sort of skips every other vector. So it's going to machine the lettering, and then it's going to leave the area around it unmachined. And then it's going to machine between this vector and that one. Then it's going to leave this and then machine between this vector and that one. So that's the strategy I wanted to implement. In order for that to happen, I had to add this vector, because it didn't exist. If I didn't add it, then it would have done the opposite of what I just described. The other vector that I changed or offset was this one, and the reason I did that is it kept that space here. It would have been a little bit tight up in this end here, and I didn't really want that. So that was just having looked at the image. It wouldn't be wrong to do it without those modifications. It's just that the way I wanted the project to turn out, that's how I chose to do it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to flip from the bitmap, or from the drawing side, over to the toolpath side. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a VCarve engraving toolpath using all of the vectors except this outer one, because that outer vector is there to basically cut the profile of this piece. But I want to carve the rest. And as you can see, I've got a flat depth set at 0.25 inches, and I'm going to be using a 30-degree V-bit to do the work. And I'm going to calculate that. And let's just reset the preview and preview the toolpath and see what it looks like. So you can see, even though it wasn't ideal, it's not perfect, the vectors aren't perfect, it's pretty good. And again, this becomes at your discretion whether or not this is clean enough, or if you'd want to clean up some of these vectors, or even find a different, more high resolution image. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to create a second toolpath, which is a profile toolpath. Let's go back to our 2D view. In this case, we're going to select this outer border. We're going to machine to a depth of 0.78 inches using a 1/4 inch end mill. And we're going to calculate that. And the software should tell us, which it does, that we're going to cut through our material, which is okay. That's exactly what we want to do. And then we're going to reset the preview and preview all the toolpaths. And that's the image that we're looking for. I will just get rid of the scrap piece so we can see what the image looks like. And if we chose to, we could, let's go back to the preview, we could perhaps decide that we wanted to machine this in a piece of light walnut, and perhaps we were intending to paint it black. So that would be exactly what the image would look like. Now, there's one other thing that I want to do just before we machine this. Let's put this back where it was. I want to go to Profile 1 and go back to our 2D view. I didn't add tabs in order to hold the part, and the reason is just so I could see a preview of the part when it was completed. But before we machine it, we're actually going to add tabs. The tab lengths are going to be 1/4 inch, and the thickness of them is 1/8 inch, and I'm going to click on Edit Tabs, and I'm just going to put the tabs kind of in some strategic locations so that it'll hold the part in. So, and without the tabs, what will happen is that this part, once it's cut out, is going to be free to move around, and that's not going to be that's going to be problematic, because once it moves, the tool will damage it. So we have to make sure we add the tabs. This also eliminates the need for me to have two-face tape, because the tabs will hold it in place. And now that we've added those, we'll close this, and we're going to recalculate the toolpath. Click OK, and reset our preview all our toolpaths, and now it'll look exactly the same as it did before. The difference this time is that these tabs will hold the part in place, and you can see our tabs are exactly where we want it to be. So last step for us, we are going to save this toolpath, or save these. First of all, we're going to save the first toolpath. And we're using an Axiom machine today, so we're going to save it to the Axiom post-processor. We're going to save this, and we'll call this Celtic 1. And we would put this right on the flash drive. I don't have the flash drive in my computer, so I'm just going to save it to my downloads folder, and then I'll copy it to my flash drive later. And then I'm going to uncheck this, check this, and save the profile toolpath. We'll call it, of course, Celtic 2. And because the Axiom machine is a single tool operation, so we have to save two separate files, one for the VCarve engraving and one for the profile toolpath to cut the part out, only because the two tools are different. Because I'm using a 30-degree V bit for VCarving, and the profile bit is, the profile cut is going to be using a 1/4 inch end mill. So that concludes the design of this, and this afternoon we're going to shoot a bit of video watching this machine to